All right, so I've got a neat example here. I've got OLlama running with a couple of models, and of course, it's making available the completions endpoint. So I can submit requests to that just like using OpenAI, except in this case, it's going to be a local model. It's running via OLlama. All right, so keep that in mind. And then I have this example here, 2 files, dump out the requirements here, a few Python packages. So I'll go ahead and initialize a new environment and install those packages. So I'm just grabbing Python packages, nothing fancy here. Someday I need to do a little video about my virtual environment initialization. It's pretty helpful as well. Okay, so now I have this single Python file. If I open it up with VS Code, there's a grand total of 14 lines of code. Got an import up above. It's importing what's known as pyautogen. And then it's going to connect up to the local OLlama API that we just mentioned, the chat completions. It's going to ask for CodeLlama. And then it's simply going to set up a scenario where there's an assistant. And then there's what's known as a user proxy agent. If I understand this correctly, it's basically somebody like myself, except it's automated as well. So instead of needing to respond back to the assistant, this person can proxy Wes and send requests back automatically. So I can just hit the return key and scroll through the conversation that these 2 agents will have. So assistant talks to user proxy talks to assistant. And then at any point we can interrupt, and it could be assistant talks to us, we talk back, and then assistant responds and we give back control to the user proxy. Basically so that we can automate and move through this process a bit quicker and we don't have to type out all the responses and or questions. And then speaking of questions, we've got a question here or a request to plot a chart of 2 different stock prices. So that's all we have here. So now if I hop over to the command line, run Python here, pass in that demo py, run this. This will reach out to the OLlama endpoint, request a completion. That'll take a little bit of time the first time because that has to warm up the model. It has to load it. All right, so I get a response back and there's some code in the middle of it. So one thing I could do here down below, instead of providing feedback, I can hit return to skip. That'll automatically create a reply, in this case, executing the code. And take a look at that. We got a graph. And it gets better. I can close that window. Down below here, the chat is still continuing. So yeah, I could choose to save that in a file. I don't want to do that though. Redo the plot with just Microsoft stock. Let's see if it can make a change to it. Plot a different stock. All right, so we got some code here. Let's just hit return and see what happens. All right, well, it says Microsoft. I don't know if that's accurate or not, but it looks a little bit different. So hopefully that's actually the stock price of Microsoft. And I do know that in 2023, 2024, let's see if we can expand this actually. Yeah, I know that about this time of 2023, Microsoft was definitely in the 350s. So this looks like it's probably accurate, or at least in the ballpark. So just like that, I was able to modify the code sample. I didn't do it though. The AI agent did it. And behind the scenes, it's just using that OLlama endpoint with the Llama 3 model, or actually it's the CodeLlama model. So it's definitely interesting that I can run a local model on my Mac, and it's an M1 Mac. It's not even that new. It's from 2021, I think. So we're talking about 3 or 4 years now. So I can run that model locally, though. I don't even have to reach out to an expensive high-end compute cluster. Instead, my simple machine here, offline, I could even use it. I can generate code that actually works, and I can make modifications to that code, all using open source tooling and all running here locally on my machine. And keep in mind, this is working with a series of agents, in this case, a user proxy and an assistant agent. So if you want, you can come modify this code. You could plug in other assistants, other proxies, and you could get these things to talk back and forth or in a group and perhaps come up with some really neat code at the end of the day.